I'm Tom Fanning and this is my Unit 42 pitch. The title of my show is Texas Crooks and it's a cop drama that's based in Texas, and the title references to how the two cops may be even worse than some of the people that they arrest. The show begins with two very seemingly ordinary, hard-working cops, and as the show progresses you begin to see that everything's not as it seems and that they are in fact bent coppers. And the kind of whole premise of the show is a cat and mouse with the main captain, David Reynolds, who is constantly trying to catch them out. Although he knows what they're up to, he can't prove it, and that's sort of the main whole premise of the entire series as a whole. And in between, it's filled with lots of different things that happen to the cops, and they come very close to getting caught at times, and it kind of keeps you on the edge of your seat as you're watching it. As you go along. So as I said, you find out that the cops are actually unlawful, and one of the main sort of plot points and structure is them framing one of their good, lawful friends that is also a cop. And the incident involves them stealing $6 million and placing it in his locker, in which instance he is framed for it. And that links into an instance later on in the show when he eventually gets found out that they did frame them. As the show progresses, as I said before, they eventually get closer and closer to being caught, and another main plot point is that they're sat in a bar and David Reynolds, the captain, comes over to them and he kind of rumbles them in a really, really dramatic way, and it's a really intense scene where there's dead silence in a room full of people, and you can imagine how sort of intense that would be in itself. So when he walks in with his great stature and his presence, it really sets the tone of that scene, in my opinion, as a whole. And it sort of sets the tone for the series, because the whole tone of the series is serious, but not too serious, in a sense. The genre of my show is a buddy cop drama, where the main theme involves breaking the law and twisting it to suit their needs. There is a great theme of violence throughout the show, which has a realistic, dramatic tone to the show. For this reason, it's also an 18. The first character that appears in the show is called Frank. He is one of the two main cops that feature heavily in the show. He's actually sort of the main person, the sort of ringleader between the two, that pushes his friend into doing the things that perhaps he wouldn't do if he wasn't around. Like the bad influence in a way. My second character is actually a British character, and he's on sort of an exchange program from the UK, and he'll stop he's sort of got this weird complex where he really wants to be liked because he's got nobody else to turn to, and it's just unfortunate that when he came over, he just so happened to come across this person who was so accepting of him, and yeah, so he's just really influenced by the other characters' needs and wants. My third character is David Reynolds. He's got the most presence of all of the characters in the show, as his stature and his presence is really respected by everybody. As I said before, early on he begins to realise that the two cops aren't doing what they say that they are doing, and they're actually being really illegal and breaking the law, but he can't prove it, and there's a massive cat and mouse, and it's a really interesting story arc between them. And in general, he's a really, really, really serious character. Like, no one would mess with him. He's got a really firm hand, and yeah. The first main key scene is that he sort of tells the two cops that he knows what they're up to, but in a really cryptic way. Like, he doesn't directly say it, he just says things that makes them work out that he knows what they are up to. So it's a sort of mind-bending thing to watch. And while you're watching it, you kind of don't know whose side to take, or you don't really know what's going on. So it's sort of up to the audience member to decide what they think's right and what they think's happening. And eventually, in the end, you find out what truly is going on. And that's sort of a nice moment of relief as you realise, you're like, ah, okay, like, it's a nice feeling. And that's the sort of feeling that I like to invoke when I'm writing like scripts and things like that. My second key scene is when the two cops are trying to hide in the woods. Their captain's chasing them. David Reynolds is chasing them through the woods, and he's trying to hunt them down to see what they're up to. The two cops eventually decide to split up, and the captain finds one of them, and he manages to lie his way out of it. And this is one of those instances where Reynolds can't directly have him for it because he hasn't got any evidence, so he has to just stand there and sort of agree with this bent cop, even though he knows he's in the wrong. My unique selling point for the show is mainly because it's about two broke cops in Texas. from what I can see, I haven't really seen any other shows based around that. And then also another unique selling point is the fact that it's a British cop based in Texas, which is actually something that I also haven't seen before. And also another unique selling point that I'm quite proud of is the fact that it makes you think, it makes you work out what the other character's trying to get across to the other person, even though the other person's thinking something. It really messes with your mind and bends your mind in the way that they're communicating, because you can't work it out until you finally know in the end. My medium and runtime. The show will be running on Netflix for about 45 to 50 minutes an episode. There will only be one season of this show, however there are room for more in the future if it's well received. But it will be left on a note where it can be picked up again. However, it will be left on a very sort of tragic note in a way. My suggested cast is for my first character, Frank. I think the best person to play with this would be Bill Murray, mainly because of his presence as a person. I like his demeanour. I think he would really play a good role at being the person that influences somebody to do the wrong thing. And he kind of seems like the kind of person that you look at and you respect him, but at the same time, maybe you don't trust your instinct just because he looks respectable. The age of this character is also about 45 to 50 years old. My second suggested cast member, I think the best person to play Wilson would be Benedict Cumberbatch, because he kind of looks the closest to how I want this character to look like. And he also creates a nice aesthetic with there being a nice British cop in America. It sets the tone of him being sort of a fish out of water, which is actually, as I said, it's another unique selling point that I don't think anybody else has really touched upon in any other series. My third suggested cast member would be Dennis Farina, because he would play Reynolds, and because if you see just the way he looks with his moustache and he's sort of more older than the other two characters, he just gives off a nice vibe of don't mess with me or I will take you down. And when he says I'll take you down, it's more mentally than physically, because he can really bend your mind by talking to you. My diverse version of the cast. Alternatively, I think other great people would be Eddie Money for Frank, Andrew Scott for Wilson, because he's also another great British character. He also played in Sherlock alongside with Benedict Cumberbatch, and the two of them I think are sort of similar in a way in their acting types and everything. So if Benedict Cumberbatch wasn't available, I think that Andrew Scott would definitely be a great choice. And also Daniel Day-Lewis for Reynolds, because they sort of all look together as if they fit the characters if the others weren't available. My target audience for this is 18 to 35. This is due to the adult humour with addition to comedy. I would say it does attract the younger ages, but at the same time more slightly older due to the dramatic tones and scenes throughout. But this show will mainly appeal to people who enjoy crime, buddy cop dramas and comedies actually, due to the comical scenes throughout. But yeah, there's elements of both of those genres in my series. My budget and funding, the total for my budget and funding is actually quite expensive due to my characters that I've chosen. So my total is 1,215,000, but that's adding up literally everything from actors to the locations that would be used throughout.
Is that per episode or season?
Oh, that's across the whole season. I also have my production schedule here, so everything's planned out as you go along and accordingly. So it makes it a lot quicker and easier to make sure things are done on time and they actually get done. The launch date for my TV series would be the 19th of August in 2020, and will appear on a TV series on Netflix. This seemed like the best time of the year because it's relatively warm, and I think, I know that might sound kind of strange, but I think that makes people a bit more happier and uplifted, and they might just enjoy it a bit more, I think. I don't know. But yeah, and because it's aimed at 18 to 35-year-olds, there's also a lot of free time in their schedules to watch this show at that time of the year, so I think that's a great time to drop it. I also have a contingency plan, because there's lots that could go wrong while shooting. For this reason, it is important to have a backup plan. If an actor is unavailable to attend the shoot, then we can film other scenes and gather B-roll for the shoot. There's lots of alternative things we could do throughout. If the weather isn't correct as well for an outside scene, then we can also do an inside scene instead. We're just going to plan it accordingly, parallel to what we're doing on the day, so we always have a backup plan, so we never waste money or get things wrong. The relevant legal and ethical, just in general, it's just things like when it comes to swearing, making sure that the show's an 18 so that nobody under the age is being influenced by this show. And because of the dramatic scenes throughout, it is important that ethically it's not shown to the wrong person, as there are people out there that are heavily influenced by what they see on the media.
Could you show some of your sample materials next?
Over.
Could you talk me through kind of where in the storyline that scene would happen?
Reynolds is trying to get onto them and figure out what's going on, and there comes a point where he does know what's going on, and he's trying to find links and people that the two cops are affiliated with, so he's trying to get them down. So in this scene here, he shot him in the legs, he fell over, and then it follows to him tying him to a tree and getting information out of him.
Okay, great. And the next sequence that we're going to see is what?
My scene 2. This is the following scene after that one, when he ties him to a tree.
Great.
What do you know? What are you doing here?
What do I tell you on about?
You want to walk again?
Do what you gotta
I've got the other
16th Avenue, Walker's Common. That's all you need to know.
Clean yourself up.
Great. Good. And with your script, that is the first scene that we saw?
The first, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Good. Brilliant. Okay, well, I'll give you a little bit of feedback. I think I like what you're saying about the unique selling point of the British cop being the fish out of water. I think Bill Murray and Benedict Cumberbatch would make a great casting duo. I think that's a really good pick. I wonder if it might be interesting. I was thinking about your alternative casting that you had, and I wondered if it might be, if we think about the target audience, if what you would think about maybe casting the captain character, the Dave Reynolds character, maybe as a female, Diane Reynolds maybe, and that could be quite interesting. That could potentially extend the target audience of your program a little bit in terms of the gender of that target audience, and it could be just add an interesting dimension. Maybe a slightly older female could be a good pick, and I think your target audience of 18 to 35 would, even if you didn't decide to take that alternative casting, would need to be extended, because actually this is a drama. I mean, I'm older than 35 and that would appeal to me.
Yeah.
So I think that you could definitely extend that target audience, and it would be relevant. I think your 1.2 million per season is quite punchy. I think you probably would need to increase your budget, because Bill Murray, I mean, he's a bit of a legend, isn't he, really? Yeah. And Benedict Cumberbatch is quite sought after at the moment. So those two alone would be quite expensive, I think.
Yeah.
And it would be a brilliant TV series that lots of people would want to see, and that you could definitely sell to Netflix if you had big names like that. You might want to think about making it a co-production between BBC and Netflix to enable you to enhance your budget a little bit more to get those key people. Those would be my main bits of feedback. So think about diversification in your casting, think about extending that target audience and extending the budget as well, just to make sure that you've got maximum chance of getting those key people.